career artist, it's not an easy business. It's just not. That being said, the tools that we have today sure do make it a lot easier if you're smart about it. Say you've got 5,000 or 10,000 people on your page, right? And 1,000 of those people are willing to spend $100 supporting you in a print or whatever. You got 1,000 people investing in you and your product. Well, suddenly, you're now eking out a $100,000 wage.
Welcome to the Creative Endeavour podcast, where we explore the lives and journeys of those extraordinary artists around the world who bring their creative vision to life. From overcoming creative blocks to building meaningful connections and thriving careers, this podcast offers you the stories and strategies that will help you navigate an ever-changing art world. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Andrew Tischler. It's an absolute pleasure to have your company here once again. In this episode, I'm talking to Renato Muccillo, who's a brilliant artist that I've been following for many years. He's based in Vancouver, Canada. Now, for me, Renato really is the definition of success. He's doing exactly what he wants to do. He's been doing it for decades, and he's forged an amazing career, selling virtually everything that he paints. I find not only his work super inspiring, but I find him as a person really inspiring. Now, this conversation was a great opportunity to geek out about the craft of painting. If you wanted to know how Renato does what he does, well, there's a huge portion of this conversation where we talk shop, and I got a lot out of that, let me tell you. But what I really love is Renato's approach to his business and his career, and how he's built something on tried and true principles. Now, how many of us today are in such a rush to get there in this fast food culture, Instagram clicks and Facebook likes and instant gratification, and really wanting to get there so fast? A lot of us can have the tendency to forget these old school approaches. Now, I'm a big fan of taking the new school and some of the technology that's available to us and marrying that with an old school approach. But exactly what kind of old school approach? What are those lessons? What are some of those strategies? Well, Renato, who I appreciate so much, is a real open book when it comes to how he's built what he's built. And a huge takeaway for me, I'll just let you know, spoiler alert, from this conversation, was that slow and steady approach and building something that's based on win-win relationships. It comes down, at the end of the day, working with people that you know and people that you trust, and really fostering a beautiful, friendly, mutually respectful relationship with people that are representing you or whoever you happen to be in cahoots with building an art business. There's many different ways to do this in these days, and that's a wonderful thing about being in today's art world, is there's so many tools that are available to us. I just really love how Renato's done it. All right, before we get stuck into this episode, I just want to take a quick minute and tell you about this podcast sponsor, Rosemary & Co. brushes. Now, I got to tell you, Rosemary & Co. have changed the game for me. Now, whether you work with oils, acrylics, or watercolors, these brushes, hands down, are the best in the world. They've been creating artist brushes for over 40 years. And believe me when I say this, they really know what they're doing. Now, I've personally been using Rosemary & Co. in my own work, and I've seen a huge shift and an improvement in my technique since using them. The precision, the quality, the consistency, and the sheer variety that they have is just outstanding. It's really next level. And now I will not use any other brand. And by the way, I'm only going to recommend to you products that I'm actually using and things that I love. So if you're serious about your art and you want to elevate your craft, you got to check them out. Visit rosemaryandco.com and discover the difference for yourself. That's rosemaryandco.com, and your art will thank you for it. And a huge thank you and shout out to Rosemary & Co. for sponsoring this episode. And one more thing before we get into the podcast, just want to remind you that there's an official video version of this podcast. If you want to see Renato in his studio, and where he's talking about some of his work. And also I have my editor cut in some images of what we're talking about, some of the close-ups of some of these paintings. Then make sure you check that out right now on Tisch Academy. You can find that by visiting tisch.academy or click that link in the show notes, and I'll see you over there. For just the very basic bottom tier of the studio subscription for Tisch Academy, you have access to the official video version of the podcast, along with over 300 hours of painting content. It's really more content than you could shake a brush at. So if that sounds like you and you want to check out the video version of the podcast, you can find that on Tisch Academy. And I thank you for checking that out. All right, I cannot wait to get into this episode with you. But before we do, just make sure you're following Renato right now. If you're not already doing so, he can be found on Instagram at Renato Muccillo, all one word, _fine_arts. That's RENATO MUCCILLO, and on his website, renatomuccillo.com. Make sure you're following his stunning artwork over there. You'd be glad you did. He certainly is so inspiring. He really is extraordinary the way he does what he does, and I certainly always get something out of talking to Renato. So here he is. This is Renato Muccillo in the Creative Endeavour. Renato Muccillo, welcome back to the Creative Endeavour podcast. Such a pleasure to catch up with you again.
Good to be back, Andrew. Good to be back. Thanks for taking the time and having another chat. Round two.
Likewise. Yeah. No, I appreciate your time, man. And I'm excited to get into whatever we're going to talk about today. Often I start these things off without much of a plan. I used to have a set list of questions that I'd ask, and I just found it just made the conversation not flow as nicely. But it's just wonderful to have a chance to catch up with you and hear what's going on. And so why don't you catch us up, because it's been a few years since you were on the podcast last. And I've been following along on Instagram, and you've been posting some amazing work. What are you working on right now? What's new in your world? What are some of the things that are exciting you?
Well, I mean, I'm just getting back into the studio now. We're getting into the end of summer, and so yeah, summer's always kind of hard to be inside, right? We have such a short window of weather here on the West Coast that I take kind of a teacher's schedule where, I work from September to June, and then June to, end of August, I take off. So, I mean, you can kind of see, I normally don't do interviews from my studio. I'm usually upstairs in my office, but I figured something different. So
this is great.
Yeah. It's just one of these things. I don't get a chance to chat to people from this chair very often. So, but yeah, and I'm just, I'm just getting back into, I've got all of these paintings around me that they've been kind of wearing out their welcomes. Let's just say they've been here for a while, where I've started them and put them down, started with other projects and put them down. So now I'm kind of getting back into finishing all the pieces that I'm just starting and working towards kind of my winter. We do a winter group show here on the coast, and hopefully start thinking about possibly doing another solo show on the East Coast for next year, depending, or possibly 2006 or 2026. And we'll see what happens. What else is happening? Getting ready to do my first print release. We had this conversation the last time.
Whoa, yes, we did. Yeah.
So I've been kind of juggling the idea of doing it again. It's been, my goodness, my last print release was done in 1996.
Dude.
Yeah, I know. It's been a while, and but I'm just getting inundated by people who are like, "Hey, do you do any prints?"
Right
I'm
on,
like,
man. Put me in line for that one. Yeah,
yeah,
awesome.
and I kind of just dug my heels, and it was like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And, as I'm getting a bit older and I'm going to be 60.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
No, you're
Yep.
not. In May. When's your birthday in May?
May 2nd. May 2nd.
Oh, I'm
So
I'm
that's
May
May.
5th, so not too
Oh,
far
yeah,
after you. There you go.
great. Now we're all kind of clustered up at the beginning of
There,
May.
there you go.
Good stuff happened.
That's it, man.
Yeah. So, and I'm looking at it, and I mean, life's priorities have changed since the last time we spoke. I mean, it has to have been what, 5 years since we
Oh gosh,
last.
has it been that long? Maybe.
Was it
Wow.
was it pre-COVID? Was it
Well,
pre-COVID
we,
that we?
we spoke we spoke together just privately because we were talking about Prince, and this wasn't a podcast or anything. I was just
Yeah,
hitting you up about, hey, how would Renato Muccillo do Prince, which
yeah,
which I'd love to get into a little bit more as well. But yeah, gosh, man, it's been too long. It's been too long.
yeah. Since
Yeah.
our last interview, it's. I mean, a
Mm.
whole lot has changed a lot in my life, and
Okay. Okay.
I lost my dad in
I'm sorry.
2021. Yeah, and mom was diagnosed shortly thereafter. Actually, she was diagnosed prior to his death, with dementia, and we were dealing with my father before he passed away, and
Right.
his
Right.
illnesses and stuff, and then he did, and then we kind of discovered the severity of my mother's dementia,
Oh
and
my word.
I think we all kind of just stopped our lives in our family to
Wow.
facilitate and care for my mom,
Hmm.
try to keep her
Hmm.
in the house for as long as we could,
Right.
and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And we were lucky enough about a year and a half ago, we managed to find a really great care home that
Okay.
took her in, and so life is kind of gotten
Right.
back to, well, I wouldn't say back to normal.
Hmm.
It's we're just juggling, me, my brother, my sister are just juggling new things, right?
I understand.
You've got a sick parent. It's just you don't know what's coming your way, and
Yeah.
from day to day. And the other not long ago, she had a heart attack just 2 weeks ago. So it was just like, oh man, just when we thought everything was kind of getting back
Yeah.
to somewhat of a normal
Yeah.
state again, and something else happens. But
Yeah.
she bounced back on her feet literally within hours of having it, and
Oh wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but that, I mean, that's what life has been like for the
Yeah.
last. And I moved, and
Right.
got a newer studio, bigger studio, and
Hmm.
newer home and stuff like that. So, but yeah, just trying to kind of keep on the track, right?
I
Of being
understand. Yeah.
creative
Yeah. Yeah.
and working at my gallery out here on the coast. They switched ownership, so
Hmm.
it was
Hmm.
reestablishing new relationships and new
Right.
things. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So it's
where's this gallery?
White Rock Gallery, which
White
is
Rock. Yeah.
yeah, it's in White Rock, British Columbia, which is not far from Vancouver. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
and new owners are fantastic people, but again, right, it's they're new owners, right, doing things differently, and establishing new
Hmm.
relationships, and that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, life has been a real interesting mix of new things, to say the least.
I
So
hear it. I hear it.
yeah,
And one thing I appreciate about you, is sometimes you'll make a post on your Instagram of a personal nature. I'll never forget a post that you made of you cutting your mom's hair. There was just such a sweetness there, and I could tell that she's such a huge part of your life.
yeah.
So and I appreciate your willingness to share some of that personal story with us because a lot of us are following you and your work, and it's nice to see a bit more of the man behind the work as well. By the way, was that focaccia you were making? You posted this
I
yesterday?
was. Oh, I did that. Oh, it was
Oh,
better than
dude.
look. It was so good. I usually I made that for my mom, right? So usually when I go and see my mom,
Yeah.
this was the thing, right? I try to do for her what she did for us, right? So I'll bring
Beautiful.
little bits and pieces of
Yeah.
home to her, right? So her favorite things, and that was,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's just my love of cooking as well, right? But I think it was as much for me
Yeah. I was looking at
as it
that. I didn't
was
even,
for her.
dude, I
Um,
didn't even see the name on that post until after. I was like, oh, Renato's posted this. I was going, oh, that
yeah.
does look good.
Oh God, it was so good. Yeah, I mean, it's like edible science, right? It's an art. So, I mean,
It
and
is.
this is something that a lot of people don't know about me as a painter, is that
Mhm.
option B for me in my life was culinary arts, right? So,
Right.
uh, yeah, I really, really wanted to go down that road. When I was in high school, it was like,
Mhm.
being an artist, I knew I loved, what I did, as a painter at the
Mhm.
time. I mean, I was a young kid, but I loved cooking, and I was, not bad at it, and at least I thought, anyways, right? Um, but yeah, and painting won out, but I still have this great love and passion for food. So, and my
Yeah.
heritage, right? I'm Italian, so it's just kind of part and parcel.
You kind of have to, right?
Yeah,
With the Italian heritage, it would be a
yeah.
crime if you weren't
Well, that's
you weren't making
exactly it.
something amazing. Yeah.
You're missing out on the best part of life, right? So,
It's cool. It's cool getting a glimpse into your studio right now and seeing these works. And I, as a painter, I'm looking at some of these unfinished paintings. One of them just here to your right. I it's interesting seeing the process here. I just shifting gears a little bit. You the, that is probably the most detailed block in. It's almost like you're not even blocking in. How like, can we talk shop and really geek out about some painting for a little bit?
yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely. This is what the
So
interviews.
you're working on. It looks like you're working on some sort of ground there. What is that? A raw sienna wash in prematura?
This is actually just gosh, this is an ochre, probably with a little bit of cad yellow in it, and
Wow.
just to brighten it up. And again, like with these things, right? I'll kind of get my teeth into a painting and block in real quick. But I mean, even my block ins, this was last night's work, and or this was anyways. And
Hang on. This painting's pretty big. You've gone from the top of the sky all the way down to that, or just the
yeah,
band of
well,
hills.
this is what I was telling you. This painting
Wow.
kind of started about a year ago, right?
Okay,
Well, maybe
okay.
2 years ago, right? And I
Right.
kind of started it, and I couldn't quite figure out what direction it was going. And I
Hmm.
mean, I don't do a whole lot of drawing on my paint, like my panels or my canvases. Like I don't, unless it's really intricate and I feel like I need to do it.
Hmm. Hmm.
I just kind of freestyle, right? And
Awesome.
I find that um, the more restricted to lines I am, right? uh, Something about it just drives me a little crazy, and things start to kind of look a little static. And I like going in and going, okay, well, let's just do a wipe of color here, right, and just see what happens, right, and just kind of composing these things and bringing out strong, the elements that are most important, right, and using these tone grounds to kind of shine through and guide me through these things, right, but leaving a lot of this kind of showing through.
Mm.
And this is how I work, right.
Hmm.
It doesn't always work. Hence a painting being parked for 2 years, right? It's just one of those things where, yeah, I just kind of put it back on the easel. It's like there's so much good in this on this panel. I don't want to toss it, right?
Right.
So back up it goes. Do a little bit more playing. It may get finished in a couple of weeks. It may sit for another couple of years if things don't go the way I feel they should.
I,
So
I
yeah,
appreciate that. You know,
yeah,
so many of us want to toss or burn the painting when it's
yeah.
like, oh, it's not working, and but I like what you're doing there, putting it aside. On the academy, we call that cook time. So
Yeah, well, that's
you got to let that idea cook a little bit, like a fine Italian sauce. Here we go.
it. Exactly. Well,
You got
that's
to let
just
it
it.
cook down. Yeah.
You may not have an answer to that question right now, but it doesn't mean you're not going to have an answer to it a year from now after you've done another 50 paintings, right?
Wow. Yeah, man.
It's how it is, right? Sometimes those things just aren't meant to be finished when you'd like them to be finished.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm astonished at the speed at which you work. And so let me ask you this. So looking at this, so for people listening to the audio version, I hear watching Renato's Zoom call here, and I can see so this profile of this painting that you're working on, that looks like gator foam, or is it ACM panel, or is it a linen
Right
panel?
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an acid. Well, what I've done, I really love to experiment with different surfaces and,
Hmm.
and kind of substrates, right? I prefer wood panel. It's just,
Yeah.
but start getting bigger, and aluminum as well. The
Hmm.
new aluminum panels, they're really nice, but they
Oh
can
yeah.
get heavy, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
God forbid you drop one,
Oh.
especially on your foot.
Oh
Because,
yeah. Yeah.
and let me tell you, sharp
Yeah.
edges,
Mm.
they can be brutal, and if they bend, they bend, and that's it's done kind of thing. With these,
Oh
what I've done with
yeah.
this, I did like three or four of them. I had the
Hmm.
guy that does my canvas, or he built my stretchers and does some of my framing, and I had him cut a bunch of panels, and these are acid-free archival foam core panels,
Mhm.
Gator board, I think it is, or
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that. It's
yeah,
good,
yeah.
hard.
Right.
And then I had him dry mount canvas onto it. So we're using like a Fusion 4000, which is an acid-free, heat-activated film, right? So they basically put it onto a dry press, right?
Right.
And lay the canvas down. And I use a specific canvas that I get, and it's 11 duck, which is really, really finely woven and really tightly woven.
Hmm.
Basically, tent canvas is what they use it for, right?
Hmm.
And then they treat it from that point for their industrial uses, and wash it out, and you can put the GAC on it and use it as a substrate, kind of like linen, right?
Hmm.
But it doesn't have that tendency to have such rigid qualities when you're trying to stretch it like linen does, right?
Hmm.
Linen is there's a it's just an art that I haven't mastered as far as stretching. I always seem to get buckles in linen, so I like to actually mount it if I can.
Hmm.
But this canvas is just so beautifully smooth and tight, and and if I need to, they can reheat this surface and basically lift that canvas off,
Oh, wow.
so it
So
can
it's
be actually
reversible.
reversible. Yeah, and
Th-
that's the beauty
that's
of it, right?
that's
So.
important. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's and it's light. That's the other thing. Once it's in a frame, it's you're only dealing with the weight of the frame. You're not having to deal with, a 24 by 30 or 36 or whatever, the weight of wood panel, which
Hmm.
man, it can get heavy. Like
They
it
can
can get
get real
heavy.
heavy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've always been a guy that likes fairly rigid surfaces to paint on and smooth, right?
Extraordinary. So
Yeah.
I suppose with all of that fine detail, you're not the bounce in the canvas that give it would be I find if I'm trying to do a real detailed painting, mind you, I probably don't go to the maybe actually no, to be fair, on some of my paintings, I probably do go to pretty intricate line work, and brushwork. Actually, that said, Renato, you're a lot looser than I think people give you credit for. When you get up close to a lot of your paintings, there's I do appreciate how they fall apart. But that give, is that something that you find is a little bit distracting, a little bit tedious?
I just, yeah, there's just something about that flop, right? That
Yeah.
springiness, especially because, I mean, I like to go in and I love wiping surfaces down, right? I'll take it
Right.
and I'll
Yeah.
wipe it back, or, I'll use a bit of rag and solvent and stuff, and just kind of wipe away, or push in with an old crusty brush, right, into paint film. And when you start doing that with canvas, it kind of like gives, right?
Mhm.
And the more you push, the more it stretches, and then suddenly you're left with this real kind of loose, loose surface to work on, right? So
Yep. I've got
yeah,
that right now. It's a nightmare. And I turn the thing
yeah,
around, I hammer in those keys,
yeah,
stretch
and
it out
you're
again.
spraying, yeah, respraying it with water, and and
Nightmare.
that's yeah, and it's not good. So
No.
um, that's, just working on this surface, or just harder surfaces is my thing, but yeah.
So do you ever change the color of that imprimatur, the initial colored ground, or is
I do,
okay? So what are
I
some
do.
of your go-tos? So here we got the ochre and a cad.
Yeah, yeah. This is quite a bright one for me, just
Hmm.
because of the nature of kind of this scene, and kind of the light sources, strong light sources, right?
Hmm.
So I like having this kind of just show through, and it works to my advantage. Later evening type paintings, just kind of looking, if you look over there, you'll
Oh
see
yeah,
one
yeah,
done, um, a much deeper kind of transparent red oxide, and that again,
yeah. Hmm.
sun coming from behind, right? Silhouetting everything and just kind of burning edges, and making all of these opaque objects just kind of glow with light, right?
Right on.
Uh, but and overcast days, there's again, that's something that's a little different. Again, you're dealing with like raw umber with hints of blue in it, and just thin washes just to kind of gray and neutralize
Hmm.
the stark white canvases, right? And that's really nice to work on, because that is kind of the color of light that you're going to experience, throughout the day on a scene like that. So,
I love that you're changing it up depending on the type of scene that you're doing.
yeah,
So what
yeah.
what
I mean,
is it? Oh, sorry, go on.
no, no, go,
I was
go
just
ahead.
gonna say, what is it about working on the stark white though that you find an issue?
Uh, it just, you know what? Doing a tint, I'm sure I'm not the same off the easel. Um, doing a tint, it kind of meets you in the middle, right? It
Mm,
just there's a lot to be kind of extracted just from that alone, right? So
yeah.
it just seems so daunting when you're looking at something white and you're like, okay, well, I've got to cover this, right? And I find that, I mean, first off, you're dealing with a harmony, right? And this is a really beautiful way of harmonizing paintings, because if you're allowing a little bit of this to kind of show through in
Hmm.
really thin layers, and go to a museum and take a good long look at some of the masters' work,
Oh
and
yeah.
you're shocked when you see how much of the underpainting is actually showing through, right?
Oh yeah.
And people have this tendency, and I did for eons, that they were so busy covering up the white surface, because there's very little white in actual, in a landscape scene, right? The brightest of brights are white. The rest, they're somewhere kind of in the middle, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
um, and when you're doing this sort of thing, it just kind of takes you down, right? Sorry, the sound that you hear in the background is the dog. He's literally
Yeah. Is
going,
he
rolling
snoring?
on. He's
Okay.
snoring and rolling around.
Awesome.
Um, so yeah, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of go into these paintings, and kind of just it's like I said, it's kind of the middle ground, right? You've already established a lot of things just by
Mm,
doing this, right? And
mm.
these could be your highlights for when you're halfway down into the values and stuff like that, right? And keep your whiter whites and your lighter lights up top into the focal points, and that sort of thing. So it just doesn't seem nearly as daunting as looking at a straight white canvas.
Yeah, I see. I can't do the straight white canvas. I just.
Everybody. Oh, okay, there you go.
Oh,
Ah,
there he is. What's
there
his
he is.
What's this fella's name again?
Sam. Sam the ham.
Sam the Ham. Sam is a
Literally.
gorgeous. He's a French bulldog, right?
Bulldog. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Hey,
Yeah.
Sam. We've seen
This
Sam on
boy,
Instagram several
this boy,
times.
yeah, he's again on top of the issues with my parents. He had a real tough go a couple of months ago as well, and had to
Oh,
go through a bunch of surgeries and stuff. Just yeah. So
oh, Sam's lived to tell the tale. Here he is and fighting
yeah,
for him. Look at him.
yeah, that's a thug.
Yeah, I appreciate this approach that you've got, and how much of it is informed by the masters. I mean, as you say, when you look at these paintings in museums and in collections, that's what gave me that that cue. It's like, oh, hang on a second, they're not working on a white canvas. There's an underpainting there. There's an imprimatura. There's a wash, whatever it is. One thing that got me on that track was the burnt sienna that Constable would use behind a lot of his landscapes, and there was this bright red that came through, and I was like going, what is that? Like, and I remember looking at a section of trees that was unfinished, and it was just the red wash, and I was like, oh, that looks kind of weird and gaudy, and I've never seen autumn trees that are quite like that. And I was like, oh, dude, he didn't finish the painting. That's what he was working on. It's like, of course. And it was like this light bulb moment. But then once you see that, you start seeing it all kinds of places between the gaps in the brushwork on an Edgar Payne painting, and this whether it was a raw umber or a sienna or whatever he was using, but there was this warmth that would come through on some of those. And I find it that, like you say, to knock that tone down is it's a vital first step, because if you're trying to paint light, you can only go as far as your most reflective light, and you're already starting there when you're working on the white canvas. So you got to fight with it the whole time to knock it back.
People have a tendency, I did too, is to start painting really dark, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
amazing when you tint a canvas, right? Just something as simple as, and it doesn't matter whatever color you're using, right? I mean, you'll figure out what works best for your work. But earth tones for me and depending on the sort of scene I'm trying to convey. But yeah, I mean, you lay down a wash and then suddenly just wipe down your sky, bang,
Mm,
right? And wipe down highlights within the landscape itself. And suddenly, you know, everything just starts to make sense.
right
And
on.
you're able to kind of register your values just a lot easier, right?
Hmm.
So yeah,
Hey,
put
Sam.
him.
Sam's happy.
I'm going to put his pen in.
Really interesting getting a glimpse here in the studio because now like I can see your palette tableau and the paints are out and I can see a cheeky bottle of Liquid Original just over your
Yeah,
shoulder there
okay.
and yeah, there we
Product,
go.
yeah,
Well,
product
you
drop.
know what?
Yeah.
Let me ask you about that. Your approach to mediums. So I would think that your technique would benefit from something that dried a little faster, so you could get right into that layering process. So are you liquid pretty much all the way?
I'm pretty much liquid all the way, but I'm starting to
Mm.
kind of use a little bit more of the gambling products. They're just
Right.
liquid is, it can be a bit strong sometimes.
It
And
can.
yeah, I mean, it can be a bit stinky and you spend too much time around it and start falling asleep on your feet, right?
Oh
Um,
goodness.
it's,
I don't know if I got it quite that bad.
no, no, I'm kidding. But it can be a bit much sometimes,
Yeah.
especially if you're working on larger pieces. It's just like, holy
Right.
mackerel. I mean, I'm always, placing my mediums as far away as I can from where I'm sitting, right? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
constantly reaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll actually do, mixtures of it within the paint I've mixed. So
Mm-hmm.
that way I'm, leaving very little just kind of raw liquid sitting there to dry,
Yeah. Yeah.
to gas off kind of thing, right? Not that it won't gas off in paint, but it just seems like the paint, masks the smell a little bit more.
Mm.
Some of the Gamlin products they just seem way more studio friendly,
I found
um,
that too. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
my only issue is that certain products I still find get tacky too quickly. And with the liquid, I mean, I've used it for decades now, and I just find that I understand its window of openness, right? So it's
Yes.
kind of like I know I could work on it for an hour or a half an hour in areas, and then suddenly it'll start to tack, and it's like, okay, I'm done, as opposed to some of the other alkyd-based mediums where they dry just a little too quickly and get a little too tacky, unless you're working a little bit thicker, right?
Mm.
So, I mean, it's just kind of adjusting your thinking, I
Hmm.
guess.
Hmm.
But I know I had a conversation with the folks there, and um, about adding like oleo gel to the some of their products, right? Because it
Mm.
is a silica based. What is it? Hang on one sec. I can never pronounce.
Fumed silica and linseed oil or safflower oil, depending on the make. Have you got Rublev there? Natural pigments?
I don't. I've got some rublev. Yeah. A second. Is it rublev that I've got? Yeah, rublev. Yeah,
Yeah.
right there. Yeah.
I quite like their oleo gel. Yeah.
Yeah, their oil gel's beautiful. I mean, it's
Mm.
so silky.
Oh yeah.
Got, forever to do a painting.
Yeah. I don't got
That's
forever, bro.
that's
I
the
got to get
problem,
this
right?
done.
It's so nice to use, but
Yeah.
man, does it dry slow, right?
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but if you start mixing with a little bit of the McGilk, I guess
Oh, okay.
you can basically add little touches of this to this, because some of what this is in there, from what I've been told.
Ah,
So
okay.
I would add like very small amounts of it just to open it up, the time, right,
Right.
on setup or dry time, just a little bit more. Again, I get lazy and I always reach for the liquid just because I'm used to using it, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and
Yeah.
it's just one of those things. But I
Yeah.
think as time goes on, I kind of start to need to do that, just because um, I'm actually starting to really enjoy having a little bit more time to work on these pieces, especially like pieces like this, where
Hmm.
you know
Hmm.
working on cloud mass and stuff, and I can just lose myself into building forms and shapes into these things,
Love it.
and sudden, you've got to step away, or it's late at night, and you're like, okay, I gotta pack it in for the night. You wake up the next morning and suddenly everything is set up, and you're like, ah, man,
You
okay,
can't
I need
move it.
more
Yeah.
on this. I need to do
Mm.
more on this, right? And then you're basically starting over. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
and this is
that's a drawback I found with the liquid, but yeah, sorry, go on, go on.
yeah, I know, and this is one of the reasons why
Mm.
I'm, talking about prints, right? I'm
Oh
jumping
yeah.
back,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that, with how with my career being what it is, especially over the last 20 years, right? It's just like show after show after show after show, right? So you're just continually working, right? And you've got deadlines, and you're wanting your paintings to be available to continue to work on as quickly as you can, right? And with the idea of doing prints now for myself, I'm taking that those deadlines kind of away because I'm looking at being able to now work on paintings, not doing the 50, 60 pieces a year, right? For
Mhm.
shows and for sales throughout the galleries, just be able to do like, okay, let's do 20 pieces a year and allow just a little bit more time to be
I
able to
love it.
work on these pieces, right?
Yeah.
And not
Yeah.
worry about drying up by tomorrow so I can continue to work on them. It's just like, okay, let's just slow this down a little bit. Let's do some major paintings, some big stuff, and let's just enjoy the process of not having to chase a medium around before it dries, right? So,
I love that. I love that. So I mean, so you found this, I imagine, over the years, is this pressure to meet the deadline. It's a pressure to perform in a way, isn't it? And that has got to sap your creative energy in so many ways.
well, it does and it doesn't. I find
Okay.
that I work best under pressure. I always
Right.
have.
Okay.
Yeah, and I find that um, I'm so easily distracted, right? I've
Okay.
got so many other interests in life, right? And
Hmm.
I've mentioned this to you before, right? I mean, I love doing all of these different things, and it's one of the reasons why I've always loved having galleries, right? It's because I can just do my work, allow them to do their work, and then
Hmm.
enjoy the free time I have to enjoy the things I enjoy. But it's when there's a show involved, or I know that I've got to meet a deadline, it's just kind of like the creative dam just opens up, and if I can
Yeah.
commit all the energy to it, and once I've been forced to really sit down at the easel and say, okay, you got to work now, right? No, diddling around here. You gotta focus some energy here. Not that I don't normally, but I find that creatively, just things just start to pour out of me, right? And I just kind of knock down all the walls that I built for myself, distraction, and just go to town on being an artist, being the artist I know I can be, right, under that
Hmm.
pressure. So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, but
How do you That's so interesting. There's so many different directions we could take this conversation. I'm excited to get into all of it. I the relationship with galleries is an interesting one for me. I have kind of crapped on galleries quite a bit in my career and also over the podcast. I don't like giving them the commission, but I do also at the same time know that they provide a valuable service. So you've managed to strike a balance though that I think is quite admirable because you're in a position where it's like, hey man, you get to paint, you get to concentrate on this, and as you say, let them take care of that. So do you think a large part of this though is actually finding the right gallery, finding the right people to partner with?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I've always, and I've said this, many times before. I throughout my career, and I mean, I've been at this now for 40 plus years, a
Right,
long time,
right.
right?
Yeah.
In all of those years, for the exception of maybe one or two times, did I ever approach a gallery. I
Right.
always had the galleries approach me, right?
Amazing.
Uh, yeah, because I figured if a gallery was really interested in what you were doing, if they had a genuine interest and love for
Mm.
what you were doing, they would reach out because they felt that they had a place for you, or a demographic base of collectors was looking specifically for your work, right? And and you've got to cherry pick the best ones. I mean, I've had probably 2 or 3 dozen galleries over the years approach me, but none of them felt like a fit, except for the exception of a few, and
Mhm.
I've managed to kind of keep those in good relationships with them over the years, right? So, and they've done well. I mean, it's I think over in the last 20 years alone, I've maybe only had 4 galleries. That's
Wow.
it. Yeah. So
And so what do you think makes a great artist gallery relationship work? What do you think are some of those factors that make
I
sure this is
mean,
something that can sustain you for years?
respect,
Okay.
respect, absolute respect. I mean, it boils down to, you have to have a true understanding of each other's role in the relationship, right? They've got to allow you to be the artist that you are. You're not there, I mean, some of the higher end galleries, right? I mean, they're dealing with gallery or with artists who are established and very well established. And I've had galleries try to massage me, over the years, where it's like, oh, they really love this or they really love that, and those relationships just stop immediately, because it's like, you know what? Don't dictate to me. If you think that that's what your clients want, then you paint it, man, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, this is what you get. Sell it, right? Do your job. And so, and I understand what my expectations of them is as well, right?
Mhm.
And just treat my work, treat me with respect, and understand that, if you don't sell it, somebody else will, and appreciate that, because yeah, it's
I love that. I love that you're maintaining your authenticity throughout this transaction, though. I love what you're saying there. Because so, and I found this like especially early on. No, 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 no. We want you to be this guy. You're the rocks and water dude, and we want the red cliffs of Carragini National Park. I was like, freaking again. I've just painted that 16 times. Yeah, we want more. It's selling really great. I was like, well, there's this tendency sometimes for this over direction, but the fact that you're able to stick to your guns there and say, no, 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 this is what I'm doing. So how do you maintain that authenticity and also let me ask, like, because a lot, and I loved that we were talking about this stuff. I remember our last podcast well, but you were talking about some of the subjects that you gravitate towards. So I guess let me form that into a question. I'm having trouble wording right now, but in terms of a choosing your subject and sticking to something that you truly believe in, but also balancing this out in a commercial way. I mean, how does that work? Do you ever worry that this is going to be too like this drainage ditch, which we're kind of chuckling about in the last podcast, that turns into a beautiful painting? Do you ever have trouble balancing that out with some more kind of commercial demands?
You know what? I guess maybe with all of the experience I've had over the years, understanding, why I paint, a
Mm-hmm.
subject matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And doing it in my hand, right? I mean, someone else may interpret that completely differently, right? It's, I guess, just how I view it and how I paint it in the style and that I paint in. It just seems to work. It just seems to work, right? And
Yeah.
there always seems to be this. I wouldn't say romantic. Maybe, I don't know. This deep kind of silence to how I portray things, right? Just this really soft, gentle um, um, undertone to it, right?
Yeah.
Um, even with industrial work, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've started shooting, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, but I started using a drone, right, and
Oh
collecting
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like my digital reference material from my drone. And I'm kind of zooming around over industrial areas and stuff like that, and you get it, and you look at the raw files and stuff, and you're like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
can just interpret that a certain way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever way you want. The way I interpret it always just kind of like makes you sit back and just let a breath out, right? And just kind of enjoy it for its
Mm-hmm.
feeling, as opposed to its literal its literal mess of being an industrial site. Right? So
I
um,
love that.
Yeah. So, and and I've been lucky because, I mean, to answer your question, how have I balanced it? I guess I interpret it in a way that's marketable, I guess, people look at it and don't go, oh, I remember, this is the box, this is the box manufacturing plant over in Port Kells, right? I could see that. I know that building. They're not looking at that, right? They're looking at the bigger picture, right? And
Hmm.
it's just a very small kind of part of the bigger picture. And people relate to it that way, but also relate to the fact that, there's a certain beauty in all of it, right? And I try to really kind of extract the very best of those things as I know how to. So
That's so cool.
it's like a
Um,
song, right? It's like a songwriter,
yeah, yeah.
they can all sing about love, but it's just one of those things, right? Everyone has a different voice and has a different way of approaching it and a different experience, right? So it's, everyone's individual in that subject matter, but it's all kind of universal. So
Well, it's yeah, yeah, but you have a way of doing this that is I haven't seen anybody do it the way you do it, and
yeah,
it's awesome. But what fascinates me is hearing about some of the artistic influences of the artists that I get to talk to on the podcast. You made a post recently where you were eyeing up a Twatchman painting,
yeah. Oh, I
and
should have got it
I
downstairs. I got it upstairs. Yeah, yeah,
oh dude, and you even started doing a master copy of this thing, right?
yeah,
And,
yeah.
and that was extraordinary because it reminded me of this amazing painting that I've seen before. It's like, oh wow, yeah. But seeing a picture of you in front of that thing, and it was like, okay, I can see some resemblance. Who else?
Yeah.
What was that? Tell me about that process of painting the master copy and how that informed, the way you do things. Did it send you on a new trajectory at all?
Well, it kind of did. It really made me appreciate um, edges a lot more.
Oh
It's
wow,
just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
dissecting the painting, seeing it. I was lucky enough to see it in two different occasions when I was over in New York, and um, it was just one of those things where you look at a painting and you're thinking, like, how the heck did this guy do this? Like,
Yeah.
it looks like such a simple image. When you see it, it is such a simple image, but from a technical aspect, when you're looking at that thing, you're thinking, okay, this is just really mesmerizing, right? Because there's just so many different thin layers, right, going on to kind of lend itself in this soft blur of an image, right? And you back away from it and it just all kind of solidifies and you get right up onto it. And all you're seeing is like the lumps of the canvas weave, right? With paint in between all of these things. And it's just being kind of rubbed back and softened.
Wow.
And it was after doing that painting, I went into it immediately using the wrong canvas. I was using a canvas that was way too smooth, right? So I immediately learned the value of having a somewhat more toothy surface to
Hmm.
work
Hmm.
on, right? Which I would never use because it's for me it inhibits me to do the type of work that I do, right?
Hmm.
But now I have a whole new respect for it because I know what it can lend itself to. So, but yeah, I mean, it was just really a fun experience to kind of go through that, and I was lucky enough that I got some really good close up video of it, when I was there after being chased away by the security. Uh, so I
Okay.
don't know, looking around, it was like over my shoulder and like up there with the camera, right, doing my
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Um, but the Met actually has Metropolitan Museum of Art has a really great website in the sense of if you're looking at any of their collection, everything is high def, right? And it is these mega files that you can get right up on and get a real good sense of any of their paintings, right? So, if you go onto their website there and look up, John Sargent, right?
Yeah.
And and it'll pull up its file and you can zoom and click on it and zoom right up on it. It's just amazing.
Incredible. I've just pulled it up now on my other screen.
Yeah,
And I can see exactly what you're talking about. Like it is quite extraordinary. And you can find this file right now on Google Arts and Culture, and at
exactly.
100% you can zoom in, and I see what you're talking about. Like the edges are insane. It's almost looking like he's painting on Hessian. It's that
Yeah,
that coarse.
yeah. It is
Amazing, man.
like burlap, right? It is just unbelievably coarse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
That's so cool.
it's a big painting. Like it's
We
80 inches. It's huge.
Yeah, you can tell in this post that you made, you can
Yeah,
tell your the size of you
yeah.
compared to the
Yeah,
piece.
it's 80 by 60. It's a big piece, which caught me
Wow.
completely off guard the first time I saw it. I literally just about wept when I saw it for the first time. I didn't know it
Wow.
was there, know it was on the wall. And I remember
Yeah.
walking in and just like, it was like someone had just knocked the air out of me. It was like, oh
Mm.
my God. I had this poster in my studio for so long and it faded, right? Like to like
Yeah.
grayscale, right?
Yeah.
And when I saw it in life, it was just like, wow, wow, okay. Simplicity
Incredible.
at its best, right? And I mean,
Mm.
it's just everything about it, is it just spoke to me in the sense of, sometimes the economy of information is way better
Yeah.
than the indulgence of hours of completely useless detail, right? That
Do you
makes
find do you find with your particular process that you have a tendency to put too much into a painting?
um yeah, I do sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. And this is why
Mm.
I like working small because it
Yeah.
kind of stops me from doing that, right?
Right.
You can get away with an awful lot by pushing the brush through, a paint
Yeah.
film and just allowing the brush to kind of dictate,
Yeah.
information to you, right? And as opposed to doing a workup from a smaller piece and then
Mm.
suddenly, oh man, how am I going to do this, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
all these beautiful little marks. How do I, kind of reproduce this on a bigger scale? And it's just like,
Mm.
so
The reason I ask you that is because you know I I I found that with my own work. One thing that I've noticed, and I forgive me if I'm out of touch here, Renato, but your work, it seems to be getting like more and more simple. It's like you seem to be finding that balance for yourself. I love it all, don't get me wrong, but it especially with a lot of these drone shots, there seems to be a simpler approach to composition and your overall design, shape design. But I think one thing that people, in a misguided way, could accuse you of is, oh, he's so detailed, but they're looking at it on a tiny little bitty phone. But when I pull it up here on the screen, just looking at your website, it's amazing how painterly you are. When you reduce it down, though, doesn't it look so much more resolved? That's the, you know,
don't judge a man by a one by one.
yeah. Don't judge a man by a thumbnail. Huh?
Right?
Exactly
It's
right. Yeah.
no, it's serious, right?
Yeah.
It's like how to see these, and I say this over and over, right? Everybody's like, it looks like a photograph. Well,
Yeah.
it's the
Mm.
size of a stamp, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
gotta look at the painting, right? Look at the painting and then tell me if it looks like a photograph, right? And I guarantee you it does not. It resolves like a photograph when you step back from it 10 feet.
Yeah.
Sure, but it's I mean, I've seen some highly skilled painters that regardless of whether you're an inch away or 5 feet away, those paintings are resolved as well as a photograph. And I mean, that's not my thing. And
Hmm.
hats off to them because man, they've got some very, some very big buckets of patience going into those things. I don't have that kind of patience. I like painting, right? And I like
Yeah.
watching what paint does and then basically extracting all of these things, right? And pulling it together, right? I think that's what makes painting exciting,
Hmm.
you know? So
Absolutely. Share with us one more technical question here. What is sitting over there on your palette right now? Can you run us through the colors that Renato Muccillo is using?
are we talking right here?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Oh, I mean, well, I mean, it's all, it's all pretty. Yeah. So, your standard whites, basically, flake white, true lead white. Use this with caution kids.
Absolutely. Yeah. But
Yeah.
beautiful color. I love the lead white, man.
It's magic, right?
Yeah.
I never understood it until I started using it. And I was like, oh, okay, I get this, right? I
Yeah.
get this.
Yeah.
Titanium white, which is, your standard fare. Naples yellow, cad yellow light, cad yellow deep. Um, oh gosh, cad yellow light or cad orange light, cad orange regular, ochre, raw sienna, burnt sienna, transparent red oxide. I mean, these are all just pretty
Beautiful.
standard.
Yeah.
You know, your two blues, three blues. You know, cobalt, ultra, sometimes phthalo, but I'm careful.
Okay.
Uh, but you know, Prussian, I like Prussian just for
Hmm.
doing certain mixtures. Prussian's just one of those things where you got to be
Beautiful.
really careful with it because, I mean, it's a monster if it gets away on you.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. Right
but it's
on.
beautiful if it's mixed with earth tones, right? Your browns and your brown reds, right? Like it's transparent red oxide and Prussian make this just delicious kind of gray green. Like it's just
Oh,
amazing for
cool.
yeah, for the type of West Coast kind of atomization that I see in the landscape. It's just like,
I'll
oh
have to
man,
try that.
that's it.
That sounds
Yeah,
neat.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And as far as my greens go, you know, your standard Viridian and the olive green, which is from Gamblin, which is really nice. It's a really, really earthy, warm green.
Hmm.
Uh, what else are we using as far as the greens go? Uh, Chromium. Well, chromium, that's kind of one that, you know, that's a kind of a go-to as far as,
Hmm. Hmm.
and again, it depends on regions, right? Like, you know, if you're working in the tropics or, you know, things are just way brighter, then,
Hmm.
you know, go to like a cobalt teal and do your mixtures from that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
understand that because you're in New Zealand, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the New Zealand greens, from what I've seen online, I've never been down there, but I mean, they're just so much poppier. They're so much brighter,
Well, the
right?
pastures are the
Yeah,
rolling countryside definitely is. It's like
yeah,
fluorescent. Yeah, but
yeah.
the native bush here is a warm gray green, which is kind of
Okay,
interesting.
so
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
coastal. Okay,
Mm.
but yeah, chromium it just lends itself well,
Mm.
um, you know, to the sort of landscapes that I see and work with, right?
Beautiful.
Uh, and again, the cobalt teal is a gray color.
Hmm.
You know that. You
Yeah,
know,
I
mixed
love
with
that one.
yellows, right? It just makes just
Damn.
beautiful sunlit, super punchy greens. It's just amazing
Mm.
stuff. As far as browns go, you know, your standard, you know, raw umber, burnt
Hmm.
umber, but
Hmm.
also really, really love the asphaltum. That is a color that I just dig.
Oh, right. I haven't
Yeah, big
played with that.
oh man, yeah, no, you have to. The asphaltum is, it's kind of a. They say it's a mix of like um, transparent red oxide and
Hmm.
ultramarine blue, right? And it's
Okay.
kind of like a premix, but it really leans toward the brown reds, right?
Nice.
And yeah, yeah, and it's just a beautiful um, it's a beautiful paint, transparent. That's really nice to use as underpainting for
Hmm.
shadows and stuff. You know, you really
Beautiful.
dark passages and
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it kind of if you look at a lot of Richard Schmidt's paintings, right? He
I
does
love his
this
work.
mixture. Yeah,
Mm.
he does this mixture of you know the red oxide with the blues and the greens, right? And that asphaltum is very very similar in I know in coloration to his mixtures, and it really works well for like overcast days, you know, cool lights, warm shadows, right? It's just really really nice stuff. A really great glazing pigment,
Hmm.
but again, it's like Prussian blue. You got to be real careful with it because too much is just you know it's a monster. It'll just take everything over. So
Mm.
yeah,
Oh gosh.
that's basically it, man.
That's so neat. I while you've been talking, I've been pulling up a few of these images of your painting, this chromium marsh that you had.
Um,
Oh, so I love it, and I love the little tip of the hat to the color chromium. That's cool.
yeah.
Um, and I've just pulled up this one crescent moon. Like your handling of color, I just again, it is poetry. It's really beautiful, and I geek out about it as a painter. I'm just like, oh, that's so cool how you do it. Your edges, man. Like this is really interesting how the image seems to fall apart so much in the far reaches of the painting, there's a softness there, and you just pull that focus in into your immediate foreground. It creates such a depth that you just don't see in in a lot of work these days. But they've just got a real spatial quality to them.
Well, that's the beauty of working kind of
Mm,
just freestyling, right? Just have a general idea. You look at an image, or you have an idea or a sketch, and just basically laying paint down, right? And just moving it
mm,
around and creating these edges by either using a really big brush or just wiping back, right? And again, I've always been an advocate of, and my belief as far as paint goes, it's like paint is at its best when it's at its thinnest, right? And its purest form.
oh,
And
wow.
if I can lay down just washes of color, right? And just wipe back, and allow just those real um, outer reaches of where paint basically fades to nothing, right? Or it loses all of its chroma. At those points is where you see the glow of paint at its purest, right? It's you've just got enough. It's almost like glazing, right? You've got
I
just
love that.
enough to show the indication of it, right?
Hmm.
As soon as you go into more opaque, or you're doing mixtures with any sort of white, you lose it immediately, right? So
Hmm. Hmm.
if you can allow some of those beautiful pure edges to kind of show through in the underpainting, and you don't need to be hit over the head with it, but just enough points of interest. It's like wiping back highlights, as opposed to using opaque whites or mixtures of pigments with white in it, for highlights, and allowing, like, the underpainting to show through as a highlight. Where you get, it's like having layers of color gels, right? And how they control color temperatures with lights on sets and stuff, right? And they put gels over it, and suddenly you get the same sort of um, visual, this sort of visual effect, right? Where you get all these beautiful little pops. It's very, impressionist as far as um, its approach, right? But in a much more kind of controlled manner. So.
I love that. I love that. That's a real takeaway for me is that it paints at its best when it's at its thinnest. I never would have thought about it that way before. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, blue, I mean, it's like, I always look at the transparencies of paints. It's really important for me. Like, I find that opaque paints just don't, like super opaque, like, umbers, stuff like that. I
Mm.
mean, it's just, it's just a flat, dead color if you lay it in too thick, right?
Hmm.
But you lay it in nice and thin, and wipe it back a little bit, and it's kind of like, wow, okay, now you see its true nature, right? And I mean, these things they're intricate, right? They're not just brown. There's browns with greens in it, and browns with blues in it, or whatever you're laying up beside it. You suddenly, you're extracting these qualities out of it, right? So
That's
yeah,
right.
I mean, it's kind of like color magic, really.
Mm.
you
Mm.
know.
Color
That's
magic.
that's the understanding, the understanding of color theory, right? It's
Hmm.
it's yeah.
I love that. So, a huge part of this podcast is the business side of art. We were talking earlier about your first print run since 1996. Good night. So I'm curious. So how do you approach this? And just also for the people listening, we spoke maybe 3 years ago, just and I really appreciate your time there, and we had a conversation all about limited edition prints. This seems to be, to me, one surefire way that you could relatively easily diversify your art business and create a little bit of supplementary income. So it seems to be, for me, just a real no brainer. You want to find another way that you could have a little bit of that stabilizing force in your business, and whether some of that stuff help you as an artist with your cash flow. Just, yeah, print some works, but don't just print anything, but print something that you think would be a commercial success. How do you approach this? Where would you like to kick us off here, Renato? Because I'm just really interested and curious to how you would approach this, because it's not just a question, as you know, and many people listening would know, it's not a question of like, well, there's a painting that was a knockout, we'll go ahead and print that. You got to think, edition numbers, quality, size, all this stuff. So how are you approaching this one?
Well, it's It's kind of, this has been a bit of a challenge for me because I've kind of put an awful lot of pressure on myself as far as, first off, I want to do a painting that has never been, that belongs to me, right? It's my painting. It doesn't belong to somebody else. And I've suddenly gone, hey, I'm doing a print of your painting, right?
Right.
Um, right?
Important.
Because I mean,
Important.
it's kind of one of those things where it's like, you know what, they never knew that was coming, and they were, they initially was thinking that, okay, well, we're buying an original here, right?
Hmm.
So that was the first thing. And secondly, it's kind of like, now I've kind of queued myself up to do a print, and it's like, okay, well, which one do I want to do? Right. So now I've put all this additional pressure on myself because I want to do the knockout, right? It's just like, I want to do something that I know is marketable, um, that will be worth the time, going through production, having to fly down into the States to the printers that I will be using, and, doing all of those things, right? So, you know, as far as additions go, not entirely sure. I mean, this is kind of, it's still in the boiling, it's still in the pot boiling with me. It's like, okay, well, how do I want to approach this? Do I want to do an open run? Do it like a time release, where I've seen people doing that, where, you get 72 hours, order your prints. Either you sell, 10 or 10,000. You don't know, right?
Hmm.
Um, or
Hmm.
do you just go, okay, we're going to print 500 prints and that's it, done, or 100 prints, done. Um, when back in the day when, I was doing prints initially, I didn't do runs that were more than 500. That was, and at that time, 500, because I mean, 500 was a lot of prints back then. I mean, Robert Bateman wouldn't say that. He was
Yeah.
doing, thousands and thousands, but they were marketing it much, much
Mm.
differently. Me, it was just, you know, feet on the ground, knocking on doors, having people who represented me. I had a guy back east, who was my print dealer, right? And he was connected to all the galleries, and there was no email back then. There was none of that stuff back then. He was, literally getting in his car and going visiting gallery owners, right? And if you
Mm.
sold 500 prints this way, where there was no pre purchase expectations, like I think it was Mill Pond Press. I mean, they had agreements with their galleries. It's like, if you want to print, you want one, you got to buy 50,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
they were selling editions of like 10,000 in no time across the nation, right? But it was super different for me then. But things now, with our ability to market ourselves, I mean, life has changed exponentially in the
Oh
last
my
10 years
goodness.
alone. I mean, my
Yeah.
gosh, it's crazy. It's just
Mm.
crazy what we have as artists, the tools that we have to be able to actually make a viable living, right? As
That's right.
creatives, right? And
Mhm.
I mean, we just didn't have these opportunities up to this point, right? So, with Instagram now, I mean, we're reaching out to, 200 plus thousand people on my page
Awesome.
alone, right? But I
Mm.
mean, that is a huge spread, right? That's a lot of people from a lot of places seeing it. Mind you, the algorithm may have some control of that whole
Sure.
situation, right? Um, but it's one of those things where, I'm able to now market to a very large audience of people. So how do I approach this? I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to have to do a little bit of, I think, testing, market testing, and just do some quick posts and say, hey, what do you think? First off,
Mm.
A, B. Let's get a sense of what you like. Do you
Yeah.
want me to open edition? Do you want me to do a really small edition? So what
Hmm.
makes what makes it financially, worth doing, right? So
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. I've pondered some of these things, and I've kicked these things around so much, and I've learned several ways how not to do it, and then several ways to do it. Got burned few times in there as well. But this is something that I'm going to be. Well, we were just organizing this morning in the studio. We're going to be photographing two paintings for print next week, and I'm reminded of my conversation with Mark Majori who sells prints like nobody's business, man. Like I remember seeing a post. It must have been on his story because I never saw it since. But I'll never forget the Sprinter truck or whatever it was. The back open and tubes. You're just looking at the ends of the tubes, stacked to the roof, dude. I'm like, my man, come on. Mark's done it again.
I was lucky enough. Mark, I had a conversation with Mark a while back, and he
Yeah,
put me on Static Media, and I flew down to Los Angeles in
amazing.
February. Yeah, so I talked to the folks at Static, and that's who I'll be using. And
Hmm.
they just really, they really have an amazing, facility, and it's so small. Like there's, you don't have 100 people running around. You have a dozen people running around who are very, very specialized at doing what they do. And I can understand why Mark uses them because quality control is kind of
Yeah,
number one in this, right?
yeah.
And these things take time. So, you've got to be, you got to time it right. You got to,
Mm-hmm.
if I go in and go, okay, well, I'm just going to do 500. So let's
Mm-hmm.
print 500,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then basically, put it in your file or put it in your bin, and let's get my digital or my online store going, and then we can just basically transfer information, and I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they basically will go photography right from photography to basically dispatching the thing, right? So right from front to back as far as the process goes. So they've got, they've got people doing each one of these things. Um, and that's just kind of the easiest for me. It's like, as much as, and I've discussed this, and, it's like, well, why am I not, facilitating people with their prints and doing all of this kind of, packing? And I'm like, do I really want to do this? Like, time is so much better spent, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Sitting, creating a painting, or,
Mm,
working in the garage or doing something, right?
right on.
It just let the people who know what they're doing do what they do, right? And just pay them, right? It's
But
always
okay, let's just say you're not Renato Muccillo, artist badass over there in Vancouver. You know, absolutely smashing it out. You're just starting out, but you're on to a good thing. You know it. You've got a reasonable following. Let's say maybe 10,000, 1,000 to 10,000 followers on Instagram, and you think you could move like 50 prints. I mean, what would your approach change then? Because there's a lot of these print houses that people have access to, like, oh gosh, not to name names, but I think places like Fine Art America. A buddy of mine, Samuel Earp, said he I don't know if it was them. I think it was something else. It probably wasn't them, but he said he got a print back from this place, and then he said the quality just wasn't there. But there are some that you could self print that do okay quality. I mean, so if you were just starting out, would you approach it in that way, where you just bite the bullet and do a lot of this legwork yourself? You kind of have to, wouldn't you?
Well, you do. Again, if you're just doing an edition of 50 prints, 50 is nothing, right?
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
night's work, right?
Mm.
It's just a matter of doing it correctly, right? Making
Mm.
sure that, you've got the proper materials to pack them properly, to get them where they need to be without damage, papers, to roll them in. So, the inks aren't sticking to them. This is all experience, right? That people who are not in that industry don't know, right?
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, to us, some of it's common sense, but it's just one of those things, right? And that's why I always say, pay people, um, you know, pay people to do the job properly. But for
Absolutely.
someone who is starting out, depend. I mean, the print quality of some of these printers, these photographic printers, is 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 pretty damn good. Like, I mean, I've seen
Extraordinary.
some stuff come off. Yeah, some of the Canon printers now. I mean, these are just home-based sorts of printers, large format printers that print really, really well. And with the ability to, um, manipulate and correct and do all of this stuff through Adobe, and you can tweak your photos, and take out blemishes, and little light flashes and stuff like that so easily now.
Mm.
Doing it at home, yeah, it's completely doable depending on the size of the editions,
Hmm.
right? If I was going to do a run of 50, I'd probably think about getting my own printer, right? That's a small run. Or go the traditional route and do like a real, real kind of etching, and um, go traditional routes, and do just do it that way as opposed to a digital reproduction, right?
Hmm.
So, um, but it's one of those things where being able to do it on your own, small editions from your home, if you can get the quality up, the paper's there. There's just a bazillion choices for paper. It's just a matter of having the software and the printer, right? And that's where the money is. So, buying printers is cheap. Buying ink, that's not so cheap, right? That's where you're dumping a bunch of cash, right?
That's it.
So, yeah, and some of these print houses. I mean, when I was down in LA, just looking at their facility, I mean, God, their printers are massive. Like they're beasts, and I couldn't even imagine what it would take to facilitate ink and maintenance on something like that, right? So, yeah,
Incredible.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's but yeah, I mean, as far as for a person starting out, yeah, try starting with small editions, and you're better selling everything, because that says an awful lot when you're looking at somebody's website, and it's like, oh, I
Hmm.
really love that book, but I can't buy it anymore, right? If they are limited editions, true limited editions, right? Runs of 20, 30, 40, or 50, right?
Yeah.
Smaller stuff.
Yeah.
Um, price accordingly too, right? It's like, well, I'm only going to do 50, but I'm going to charge like $500 a print. Well, that's a lot of cash for a print, right?
Hmm.
Um, and especially if you're starting out, like, stay modest, stay within the financial realms of most people who are wanting to buy your work, right? And because a large percentage of people who are going to buy your work are going to be other artists as well, right? So it's like, be able to do that. It's not about making a ton of cash off the top of off the right out of the gates. And then as time goes on, you can start kind of looking back, and you know um, thinking about how you want how to price your prints in the future, right? So if you're doing 50 and you're selling them for $80 a pop, and they all sell out, well, okay, well, try $100 next time, right? Try and find where your limits are, right? It's just slow and steady, man, wins the race. It's always kind of been my motto, right from the very beginning of my career. It's like, just stay in an area is not about cashing out in the first year or two of your career, right? Just, this is a very long, slow, arduous sort of you know trail you're going to go down here, right? And if you want to be a career artist and you want this to last for 20, 30, 40 years, then yeah, just be patient, and don't be greedy, right? So
I love that. Sound solid advice.
yeah,
Really solid advice.
I was really lucky, because my gallery, White Rock Gallery here on the coast. I mean, we had a relationship, working relationship for decades, and she was always that voice of reason for me, right? She was always like, yeah, well, let's do a 15% increase this year, and see how this is. Okay, well, let's do a 10% this year and see how this is. Things started to kind of go crazy, right? And this is how it went. Like, I mean, we'd sell out, it got to the point where we'd sell out shows before the show even opened, right?
That's what
Um,
you want, man. That's
yeah,
the that's
and
the
that
what you want.
exactly. It was just slow and steady. So, and people would notice. It would be like, holy crap, okay, well, we're 10 minutes too late. Everything's sold. Well, why did it sell? Because everything was reasonably priced. It was marketed well. And, and then what happens is, the year following, you increase your prices a little bit, and you know, and people are now just amped because they want to be able to buy a piece, because if they don't, it's going to be gone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we just kind of slowly built this career based on that sort of logic, and it just worked beautifully, right? It was just great.
I love it. I really hope people are hearing that, because you can we're we're hijacked now by social media, this instant gratification, this quick turnaround, these huge, insane numbers, things going viral. The sense of time is different now based on the way we consume media, images, stuff, that one can forget that it actually takes a completely different mindset point of view to build this in a sustainable way. You've built a career that is enviable. Like, it's just, you look at it and it's, you've got this solid base beneath you. You're selling, I imagine, virtually everything that you're doing, and this takes years to build up. Like, and I was just talking to Thomas Fluharty. We recorded another podcast just earlier this morning, and and this is something I say a lot: success leaves clues. Success leaves clues, and the big clue for me, the big takeaway is, hey, slow down and think about your approach. Just slow down. Don't be in such a dang rush, but it's think about your approach. I love how sensibly you and your representatives have approached this, and test it and see, test it and see. And so I'd love to know, okay, so you mentioned something there. So it's reasonably priced, but it's marketed well. Tell me about some of your strategies for how you've marketed yourself. And if you had to start over again today in 2024, would your marketing approach change?
Nope. Nope.
Okay.
Um, I just, I try to come about how I market myself. And when I say market myself, the only marketing I do is through social media, right? Is literally through Instagram. That is basically my marketing. I haven't
Wow.
done anything other than that. I know Arcadia, before we do a show, they'll usually do a run in, one of the major art magazines. I think it's American Art Collector, and they'll do like an inside cover or end cover, and then do, a story based, talking about the show and that sort of thing, right? So they're covering that end of it. But as far as my own personal marketing, I try to keep it as honest and as uh, frequent, I guess, consistent. I'm just kind of just sharing my life, right? And sharing what I do. And my main concern, the most important thing to me is not what people are seeing. I mean, I kind of laugh at the nonsense that we see on social media, right? It's just,
Mm.
what are people willing to do for attention, right? And it's like,
Go
you
on.
can't be serious. Like,
Go on,
how
dude.
how can you possibly think that
Yeah.
that's a good idea, a good strategy to be taken
Yeah.
seriously, right? And
I don't know, man.
for
I thought the bikini bottoms or the G-string would help me sell more paintings.
I won't stand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where, I try to keep it
Yeah.
as honest as possible, right?
Right
Like,
on. Yeah.
budget and stuff, I'm not BSing anything. It's just, this is my life, and
Yeah.
I'm just trying to welcome people into little snippets of what I'm doing, right?
Hmm.
And I just kind of try to keep, for me, it's about the quality of work that I'm doing, not the quality of the editing and the posts that I'm doing. I mean,
Hmm.
some of my stuff is just whatever, right? I'm holding a camera and painting, man, and sorry for the shake, but this is what I'm doing, right? And it's more the quality of the work that I think speaks more than anything else. And it's like, this is what it's really about. It's about the work, right?
Yeah.
It
Mm.
kills me because I just, you get caught up in these feeds of people talking about, well, what'll bring more people to your page and get them to, to stick around and save it. And, the idea is to have them stay longer viewing. And it's just like,
Mm.
you know what? What it's about is doing really good work. And if you're doing really good work, people will stick around. You don't need to sit there and do the song and dance and sit there and be the algorithm's puppet, right?
I love it.
That kills me. It's like, it's
Yeah.
like being controlled by like literally an AI program, right? It's kind
Mm.
of like, okay,
Uh,
how
d-
is this good? How is this all
100.
good? So,
Yeah.
right? But it's the quality of work. It's market yourself by showing the very best of what you got. But
Mm.
but don't BS about it. It's just give it your all, be honest about it, and work hard. And it's all of these things combined that kind of make great careers that last a really, really long time, right?
That's right. Oh man. I love it, Renato. I love that so much. I think a huge part of this as well. I mean, it's the like. It's the feedback that we get from putting something out there, and if it could be like a little red emoji that shows up as a notification or whatever, it's like, ooh, piece of candy, piece of candy, piece of candy, and it hijacks your mind and you lose sight of what's really important here.
No, I've forgotten. Where were we?
Oh, okay. Well,
This
I
is what happens when you get old, man. It's like,
I dude, I can't. You're doing something right. Please excuse this brief interruption. I just need to take a quick minute and tell you about this podcast sponsor, Rosemary & Co. brushes. Let me ask you, have you ever felt like the brushes that you were using were just holding you back? Have you been using some dodgy quality brushes there in the studio? Maybe something that drops a bunch of hairs or just doesn't leave the mark that you're looking for? Well, let me tell you, until I made the switch to Rosemary & Co., I had a nightmare trying to find brushes that I actually liked, that I loved, and I wanted to have the right tools that would give me the techniques and just open up this thing for me. I wanted to paint. I wanted to sling that paint with some of the style and brushwork that I was seeing in some of my heroes' work. Not that I'm a master yet, far from it, but I needed something that wasn't going to hold me back. When I switched to Rosemary & Co., it was a game changer. I just started painting at a different level. And one thing I love about Rosemary & Co. brushes is the consistent high quality across their ranges. It's no wonder that they are the gold standard of artist brushes, and they make the best artist brushes in the world. Check them out right now by visiting rosemaryandco.com. And I gotta say, when I started using them, I saw a massive improvement in my work. I saw a huge difference, and their quality is unmatched. And now I've been spoiled. I'm not gonna use anything else. So if you're ready to step up your painting game, make sure you visit rosemaryandco.com, and they got everything you need when it comes to brushes to take your art to the next level. That's rosemaryandco.com. You won't regret it, and your art will thank you for it. A huge shout out and thank you to Rosemary & Co. for sponsoring this episode. Now let's get right back into it. Here's Renato Muccillo in the Creative Endeavour. 60 here coming up. Like, didn't you say 60?
yeah.
Dude, you're in great shape, man. It must be something in the liquid. It's preserving you.
It's genetics, man. My mom, like my dad lived till he was 94. Like my mom is 92, and
Amazing.
she's still outside of cognitive issues. She's still physically strong and that sort of
Amazing.
thing. That's genes, man.
That's Jade's.
Yeah, it's just
Wow.
I was lucky. I was lucky. That being said, I make an effort, and this is the other thing too, right? You got to make an effort when you get older to turn taking care of yourself, physical exercise, and as much habit as like brushing your teeth and hygiene, right? It's just as important as any of that, right? Because I can tell you,
Mhm.
man, oh man, things change quick when you hit 50. You're like, oh, I'm old. Yeah,
Oh, this
no,
elbow hurts. Why?
it's 60, man. It's no,
Oh,
it's just one of
dude.
those things. Like as much as you
Yeah.
try, regardless, right? You
Yeah.
just, and this is another one of the other reasons too. Like I'm kind of looking at this point of my career, which I never really thought I would, right? I thought,
Mm.
I'm going to paint until I drop dead.
Mm.
Well, kind of hard to paint when, your back is seizing up or your neck sounds like there's sand in it, right? It's kind
Yeah,
of like,
dude.
okay, well, I want to paint, but I can't because physically I can't
100%.
do it anymore, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'm looking at my career going, okay, well, how do I continue to be an artist without a ton of pressure on myself to do the 2 shows a year or 1 show a year,
Mm.
having to produce, 50, 60, 70 paintings a year,
Mm.
um, which seem like a lot, but really it's not. I mean, if you're doing one painting a
Right.
week, I mean, that's an honest living, right?
Right.
But at that point, it's like you want to kind of slow down. Okay, well, let's print market seems maybe like a good way to kind of supplement the income, right? And
Mm,
you talk to some of these guys out there, and I mean, it's more than just a supplemented income. It is the main source, right? And if you're doing really strong pieces that are marketable, and you've got a way of selling yourself, then all the power to you, right? Do it.
mm,
And I mean, my opinion of that was a little bit different the last time we spoke. I know that. I was like, no, I'm just doing originals. That's it.
mm-hmm,
I still want to do my 30, 40 pieces a year because I
mm-hmm,
love painting, right?
mm,
But I
mm.
also don't want to have the pressures of now, thinking, okay, well, now I'm feeling guilty because my back really hurts, right? Or, my knee is getting like I
Yeah.
lost my knee, earlier this year, right? And
Oh, wow.
it was one of those things where I had to go in for, start getting injections in my knee, right? And
Mm,
and it's like, oh man, that's a bummer, right? Like that's not good. So, plan going into plan B, into that phase of my life at this point. So,
understood. Yeah, it's smart. It's smart. I mean,
yeah,
I was on the ground the other day playing with my son Hugo, and we're there playing with like little diggers and trucks and stuff. And I go to get up, and I let out an audible. I almost sounded like Arnie. Like it just like everything freaking hurt, man. I'm like, oh no, oh no. Like now I remember my father doing the same thing, just getting up and going. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, you're
yeah.
so right, man. You gotta
Yeah,
you gotta take care of that body, man. You're only given one. You gotta take care of that.
that's just it, right? And it's one of those things that you just, you don't realize how much. It's like enjoy your knees now because you're gonna miss them when they're gone,
Oh,
right?
dude, yeah,
Just how
yeah,
it
man.
is. Whether you exercise every day, it's or whatever, right? And that's just kind of part of my life, and it always has been, and
Hmm,
but still, time and age is. I mean, it can be very unpleasant to the best of people, right? So,
that's right, man. You know,
anyways, but how's fatherhood, by the way? Let me ask a question. How's fatherhood?
as fatherhood, oh, fatherhood's the best, dude. It's
Yeah.
the best.
Now,
This has been
you've only got the one. You've only
I've
got the
I've
one.
I've got one son. Yeah, yeah. Just Hugo is his name. He's going to be
Is the first.
3 here next month,
Wow.
and it's gone so quick. And he's the light of our lives, and my wife and myself, and he's just a beautiful little boy. He's such a kind heart on him that we can see already. He's funny. He's started talking, late, but not so long ago. And the stuff he comes out with, he just keeps us in stitches. And
He was
yeah, it's
absorbing. He was absorbing, right?
yeah,
He was
yeah.
absorbing.
He's switched on too, man. He's a clever little kid. I think, oh man, you are gonna keep us on our toes.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's wonderful. It's been such a blessing, bro. Yeah, it's been awesome.
Oh, that's great. I know, and it happens and it goes quick, right? And it's just like enjoy these moments, like the best. These are the best moments of parenthood. Are these
Yeah.
first few, as aggravating as they can be, right? And
Right.
they are. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, my son's going to be. He just turned 31, right?
Oh, dude.
And
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and he's a great guy, and
Yeah. Awesome.
he takes all that from his mom, right?
Okay.
So, but no, he's it's really cool to see him growing up as a man, and
Mm, wonderful.
you can edit this all out of the
No,
interview.
I'm going to keep it in. Yeah, it's Rachel was saying something to me last night because he went to bed pretty early last night, and I got in, and yeah, and she was describing this moment that she had had where he holds onto her face and
Uh,
he's just kissing her face, and it's just so lovely, this mother-son moment. And he's just, oh, I love you, mommy, kind of thing. And she's like, I'm just soaking it up right now because I can't imagine him doing that as a 15-year-old. It's
yeah,
like,
no, no,
Mom,
and
get out of my room.
yeah, it's quite exactly. Um,
Yeah.
Funny you say that because I remember moments like that with my mother
Mm,
as a small child. Like I remember my dad would get up quite early to go to work and or go hunt. Right, that was the other thing. Right, he'd get
yeah,
up on the
yeah,
weekends
right.
to go hunt, and my mom would get up and make him lunch, and then she'd crawl back into bed and wait for all of us to wake up, and or she was
Mhm.
usually up before us, but on the odd occasion, I remember just kind of like slinking into bed with her and just cuddling with her, right? And
Mm,
and it just how incredibly just how vividly I remember that as a baby,
Yeah.
right, as a small kid,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
looking at my mother now, and it's almost like the roles have been reversed, right?
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
see her as this very um, almost helpless,
Yeah.
right? She's and she just all of the stuff that made her who she was as a mother is now kind of gone, and
Mm.
all that remains with her now is all of the love that she had for us. She's put away all of the stuff that she needed to do as a mother, right?
Mm.
All the discipline, all the
Hmm.
opinions, right? Listen to me, I know. All of that is gone. And now all it is I love you so much and thank you for coming and spending time with me, right?
Mm.
And when I see her and I say goodbye to her, I am always reminded of when I was a kid, and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
absorbing those moments with her, right? And I know that that's uh, you just don't realize the importance of those relationships that your
Yeah.
son is having with his mom and you, and those moments that that you guys will carry
Mm.
throughout your whole lives, right, until the very end. And yeah, it's a really neat experience to be able to have with them now. And because I
Mm.
mean, I always had a great relationship with my parents, but they were always my parents. They're always very opinionated, and I was always very stubborn and just really headstrong, right?
Mm.
And I just always felt like they no understanding of my life, my decisions, and yada yada yada, right? But now I look at it and I think, man, I am so fortunate to just be able to spend these times with them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Her now. But even with my dad, it was just like, me and my dad were like, boom, right? I mean, we're always close, very close Italian family, all that stuff. Love my dad, respect my
Yeah.
dad, just because he was such a hardworking guy and just a good heart.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you just didn't cross my old man, right? You just didn't.
Fair
And
enough. Yeah.
but when he got to the end of his life and he was dealing with all of his illnesses that all just kind of came on all at once, seeing this guy who is helpless, who really needed us as opposed to
Mm.
us, right?
Wow.
And that kind of relationship, kind of developed. It was like that was the best part of my memory. As bad as what was happening at the time, it was literally the very best of all of it, right?
Hmm.
Just because it
Hmm.
brought us that close, right? Where the child parent relationship was now kind of put under the table, and it was just a relationship between people, right? So and people that you love, right? You just realize
Mm.
just how much you love these people until the worst kind of shows up at your door, right? So it's just like, oh, okay, well, we need to deal with this, right? And yeah, it just brings you that much closer, right? It makes some people run away. They just can't handle it. But it's with other people, it just draws them in, right? It's their
Yeah.
natural, the natural instinct to want to take care of their families, right? So, but
Yeah.
anyways,
I love that, man. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You'll see it. You'll see it as the first 15, 16 years might be a bit of a might be a bit of a tough one to deal with some days,
Yeah.
but uh, but man, let me tell you, it's all good. It's all good. So,
It wasn't that long ago for me. I remember 15, 16. I remember the way I was. I find now that being in this position, it does make me appreciate my parents a little bit more. And
oh yeah.
I kind of understand a few things that I definitely do different. But all the same, it's like, oh yeah, yeah. And now that the roles are reversed here, and I'm like going, oh, okay.
Well, now
You
you
know,
understand,
mm,
where they're
yeah.
coming from.
To a large
It's
extent, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
it's not easy being a parent, right? It's just not. So,
No. Yeah.
financially, emotionally, you
Mm,
don't realize it. Like
mm.
it is an emotional burden that is sometimes really hard
Oh,
to
I'll tell you what though,
carry.
man. The thing that just killed me, one of the first things that he could say was data work. Data work. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, dude, data's working. And because I wanted to be in a position where Rachel didn't have to.
Yeah.
It was just she could be full-time mom, and fortunately we've been able to manage that just about. So
You know what? There is no two ways about how important that is, right?
mm,
Uh, I mean, it's hard for folks. I mean, I'm not sure what its cost of living is like down in New Zealand and stuff.
horrendous. It's probably on
Yeah,
par with Canada. I know
it,
Canada's
it,
pretty bad, man.
Vancouver is so ridiculous, and I
Yeah.
mean, it is so ridiculous. Even in the last 5 years, right?
Mm.
um, where I mean, people with young families, it's like, how do you manage? How
How
do
do you
you?
do it? How do you
I
do it?
mean, I live alone, and it's kind of like I have a dog. That's it.
Mm.
That's my responsibility right there, right? And it's
Mm.
like trying to juggle time between work, taking care of him,
Mm.
and getting all the other things done in life. It's like, man, how do you manage when your whole life is being dictated by, you know, your children, one, two, three of them, with their individual lives? How do you
Yeah.
afford this? I mean, it's just crazy, and it's really sad that families are being raised by strangers, right?
Mm.
As opposed to the parents, right? My
Mm.
mom was the same way. My mom stayed home. She raised us like like your wife, right?
Mm.
And it's like you are in direct control of how those children grow up, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no outside influence, right? So, which when it comes to shaping your children, I think is really, really important, right? I mean, but it's not a luxury
Yeah.
that a lot of people have, unfortunately.
No, that is unfortunate. I do think this is something that has changed. I mean, the wages aren't going up nearly the amount that inflation is, and to keep up with that cost of living, it's a harder and harder uphill climb. And where this used to be something that was possible back in the day. I mean, you just look at house prices, you look at mortgage prices, it's insane. This is one of the things that just makes me absolutely obsessed about business and the art business. A huge part of my motivation is now just on the personal front is how do I manage this in such a way that I can provide that opportunity for my son. And so that's a huge motivation for me. But again, I recognize that this is very tough for folks out there, and it was tough for me for many many years. Still is a huge challenge. I still am first one here most of the time, last one to leave, and it's 5 a.m. start this morning, and it'll probably be home at 7:30, and it's 5 days a week. I try to take the weekend, but it's a lot. It's a lot. But
Responsibilities are huge, right?
yeah,
And
man.
I'm lucky in the sense that I don't have a house full of kids or any
Mm-hmm.
of that, right? I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
get to focus and be really selfish with my time, right?
Mm.
And sometimes I lose sight of just how fortunate I am to be able to do that, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, being a career artist is not an easy business. It's just not. But that being said, what we have, the tools that we have today, um, sure do make it a lot easier if you're smart about it, right?
Mm.
So, I heard a little clip the other day it just kind of put everything into perspective. And it was like, if you've got 1,000 friends, if you've got 5,000 or 10,000 people on your page, right? And 1,000 of those people are willing to spend $100 doing something or supporting you in a print or whatever. Do the math. Do the math, right? It's
Fair.
like $100, not a whole lot. You got 1,000 people investing in you and your product, right? Well, suddenly, you're now eking out $100,000 wage, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is like, okay, wow, that's kind of doable. Like that, I could easily live on that. I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that I'm at that point in my life where I have no debt, right? Like my mortgage is just about paid. So it's like, okay, got enough in savings. I could survive on those things. And $100,000, well, man, that sure pads things. And it doesn't nearly seem like as big a deal, you know, as it did before, because you're starting to think about it in much smaller increments, right?
Mm-hmm.
So say you do, you know, two prints a year, $100,000 is your mark. Okay, well, those are $50 a print. How much easier is it going to be to sell that as opposed to the $100 print? Probably twice as easy, because $50 is pocket change for a lot of people, right? you can't even buy groceries for 50 bucks nowadays, right? So, you know, you can buy an art print, something that'll stay on your wall, you know, and, you know, garnish the walls of your home. And, you know, so it's, you start doing that sort of math and suddenly being able to make an actual living on, you know, art, whatever your medium may be, it just seems a lot more doable than it once was. Right. I mean, I lived, you know, 25 years of my career being, you know, nothing but originals. Right. And, you know, that's a tough one to kind of keep up, you know, because, you know, originals are thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, right? And your market is pretty small. You know, there's a very elite bunch of people that are able to afford those sorts of luxuries, right? And just thank you for those who you know who can, because you know they've given me an opportunity to do what I love doing. But you know, you also kind of want to focus on the folks that can't afford that, you know, that don't have that sort of disposable income, right? But still
Mm-hmm.
love to collect art, right?
Mm,
So, yeah.
I love that. There was a gentleman that I met on our artist in residency. He was an extraordinary guy. He invented a certain kind of technology that a lot of people use without giving it away or who he is, just to respect his privacy. He gave me some advice, and he's like, you know, you want to be successful at this. I'm like, yes, sir. And he's like, okay, do you want to make some money out of your art? And I'm like, yeah. He said, okay, well, you're not going to ever become wealthy from selling original paintings. I think I was, well, Renato Muccillo, he's doing okay. No, but but one thing he said to me is he said you're going to do okay from selling your paintings, but he said let me give you some advice. He said what you want to do is you want to find a way that you can sell a little something a lot of times, just a little something a lot of times. And again, I just think for artists that printing thing, you know, we ought to do more episodes here on the podcast about prints in particular. But I think that printing thing, there's something to this, you know, and I just appreciate hearing your point of view on this, and I'm excited to see where this new print run goes.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's if I, you know, get off my sorry butt and you know, get it all together, then yeah. I mean, I was slating for this print to be happening in late spring, and then kind of things went sideways with my mom, and things went really
Mm.
sideways with the dog, and it was just like, you know, it was kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't focus on this, right? And now, you know, we're kind of looking at it going, okay, well, you know, we need to put an online store together outside of my website and get that organized and, you know, finally pick an image that, you know, that we want to use as a first kind of release. And I'm thinking that one right back there.
Oh, very Twatchman-esque. I love
Yeah,
it. I
loving that
love it.
piece.
Yeah.
And I've been kind of plugging away at that one for the last, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months now. And it's, again, it's one of those things. It's like, now I'm overthinking, right?
Oh,
It's like,
dude. Yeah.
okay, dude, just need to relax
Okay,
and just,
put me down for one of those, Renato. Put me
all
down
right.
for one of. How do I get my hands on a print? Can we direct people to just keep an eye on
Well,
the drop when it
yeah,
happens?
it's what I will do is I will start posting
Yeah.
shamelessly on
Well done.
social
Right.
media.
Yeah.
I'll just start posting on social media what's going on, and by that time I should have my online store put together, and then you know we'll do a release date, and it'll basically just be direct to there, and
Oh,
yeah, yeah, and
awesome.
yeah, and it's we're you know we're, the logistics of it all and trying to figure this thing out. And I mean, I think it's a lot easier than I'm making it out to be in my own head. And once we figure it out, then I'll let the rest of the world know, and we'll go from there. And I'm hoping to do, you know, a couple of years, anyways, not more than that,
Brilliant.
but. Yeah,
Brilliant.
you know, it's just one of those things. Like I say, I want to start focusing on some major pieces, and um, or just at least just be able to paint without the you know the weight of um, timelines and that sort of thing, and for the next little while. And you know, you just I figure I'm at that point of my life where it's just like I want to start leaving, you know, think about leaving some really monumental and significant bodies of work that hopefully one or two of those will find their way into public collections, right? And
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
yeah, it's just leaving something behind, right? It's kind of weird to say that. I feel
No,
like I'm
no, I
talking like,
appreciate it.
but you know what? It's one of those things where I'm looking at it like, 60 may be the new, or yeah, 60 may be the new 40 or whatever it is.
Hmm.
But the reality is that, time is going quick, man. And
Okay.
I just want to make sure I get as much of this in while I can.
Hmm.
And, I want to produce the best work I can at this point and just
Beautiful.
kind of slow it down a little bit, So, yeah.
Well, listen, man, you're one to watch. I appreciate your time so much, and I hope people, that are tuning in really listen to some of these valuable lessons that you've shared with us here today. But Renato, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being on this episode of the Creative Endeavor.
It's great to talk to you. Always great to talk to you, man. It's just nice to sit back and chew the fat, man. So
Absolutely. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Creative Endeavour podcast. A huge shout out and thank you to Renato Muccillo for joining me. Right now, if you're not already doing so, follow Renato on his Instagram at Renato Muccillo, all one word, _fine_arts. That's Renato Muccillo, Fine Arts. I'll make sure I include a link to that in the show notes. Also on his website at renatomuccillo.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, then please do me a huge favor, leave me a rating or a review on whatever audio platform you're listening on. It makes a huge difference to the show. And I thank you so much for doing me a solid, taking the time and doing that and helping this podcast get out there to more and more people. Okay, this was fun. I got a lot out of it. I hope you did too. I look forward to spending some more time with you again here in the studio. I'll see you again in another edition of the Creative Endeavor.